the breath in my lungs. This can't hold me. No man. Start a revolution with no man control. Start a revolution with the breath in my lungs. Sound off. Sound off.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Take on the World TV. Tonight, we have a special sound off episode. It is our Woke Christianity Part 3. This was actually our most popular video series that we've ever done for sound off. So tonight, joining us back in the saddle is our good friend, Elijah Rust. How's it going, man? We've missed you on the show, and welcome back to Sound Off.
Glad to be back. Glad to be hanging out with you guys.
Awesome.
Looking forward to tonight.
Hailing from Canada, we have Mr. Robbie Davidson.
Good to be back, man. It's been I don't know how many months, but it's great to see us all back doing a show.
Yeah. And also from Canada, Mr. Kevin Trudeau.
Oh, that guy's so good. Go woke or go broke. That's what I say, ladies and gentlemen. I'm out.
Johnny Rocket. How's it going tonight?
Good.
And the most distinguished man of our panel, looking so smooth, so nice, makes me blush because of his new haircut. And look at how nice he looks. Mr. Doug Kirshner. How's it going tonight? Oh, he's muted. You're on mute, Doug.
Come on, Doug. Your first time.
Come on.
Hey, it's been a while.
This is your first time, right? That's what Johnny said.
Hey, y'all. I'm looking distinguished. I got these glasses. I'm old. I can't read without them.
Do you have the bifocals?
No, I have those lenses that has the bifocals, but you don't see the line, and I don't look like an 80-year-old man.
Yeah, he's looking good tonight. Ladies, he's married. I'm just gonna say that up front. You know, we're not that woke. We're not that woke over here. So, guys, oh man, we have so much to unpack, so much to talk about. Before we do that, do you guys want to share any updates on anything going on in your lives or anything that you wanted to share before we get into tonight's topic?
Don't all go at once.
Yeah, right. No one at once. I mean, it's not like we haven't talked to each other in a long time.
Now he's building a nice projects in his backyard right now. Currently, you could talk about that if you'd like.
Are you talking about me?
Yeah,
it's raining. My wife is so angry right now. She's like, "You got to get this done by Sunday." I said, "I got you, babe." Sunday. I was like 3 weeks ago.
Actually, no. Let's get into why your wife's really angry at the stoplight. You got to tell that story because it ducktails perfectly into what we're going to be talking about tonight.
Are we starting out with that right away?
Let's do it. Yes, let's do it. She's so mad.
Well, everybody knows that June has an entire month dedicated, and so we're sitting at a stoplight, and this big flashing sign comes on saying Pride Week, Pride Week, Pride Week for 8 days in August. And my wife is like, "Didn't you get a month? What do you need another week in August for?"
They're having another week in August. And what is it? City of Pride or something it's called?
Yeah, it's all across Canada. They did Vancouver last weekend, and ours is coming up in a couple weeks. And I never knew it was a thing.
Well, get your fireworks ready. It's going to be a celebration. So exciting times for Canada.
They want to do Pride season. They're trying to transition it not to Pride Month, but to Pride season, which consists from June to the end of September.
Seriously?
Can we be honest? Can we be honest?
Please.
It's actually, I mean, it's all over TV. It's all over radio. It's all over everything. So they already have it. I mean, there's nothing that we could do. I mean, a month dedicated to it. Heck, we've given them the news. We've given them all the TV
No, a season, Doug. They're trying to do like 4 months in Canada. 4 months straight.
They got every day.
I know. Just get the whole year done. Just get it over and done with. Anyways.
Yeah. So
we'll get into it.
Yeah. So we're gonna jump right in, and Elijah sent me this video. Elijah, why don't you maybe give a little background and maybe just, without giving up too much of this video, because this is how we're going to kick off today. Why don't you give a little bit of background on this, and then we'll jump right into our premise and what we're going to talk about here tonight.
I was listening to a Mark Driscoll sermon at the gym today, and he just started a new sermon series on the Book of Jude, and there was he's specifically, I'm trying to remember, I think it's titled Black and White in a Rainbow World or something like that.
Yep.
You'll see it in the background during the video, but gosh, there's this one part, it was about like 6 or 7 minutes long. He just went off on this whole thing, and it really like was directly about what we were going to talk about tonight. So I sent that to Chris. I was like, we got to play this tonight, because it was right in line with everything we were going to say. And he was really on point with everything he had to do with just like, apostasy in the church, woke Christianity, all that. So it's really good. I'm looking forward to you guys seeing it.
Yeah. So if you guys are just tuning in for the first time, so Sound Off War Show, where we typically talk about all things Christian music or things in regards to the church and just the goodness, the craziness, and everything in between. So we're going to jump right into this video. It is the video is called "Who Are the Real Christians?" if you want to look up the full sermon on YouTube. But we're going to jump right into this. It's about 6 minutes long, then we'll jump in.
Apostasy is not a ministry. There are people today that say that they are Christians, and they believe that their apostasy is their ministry. It is not a ministry. It is a satanic, treasonous declaration of war on Jesus Christ. That's what it is. Hence Jude's strong language. Today we would call it wokeism. And those on the progressive left would say to those who are more conservative, you can't even define what woke means. Well, it's because it's not just an ideology, it's an individual. It's not just a philosophy, it's powers and principalities. There is a demonic force at work, not just in the world, but in the culture that is anti-Christ. And some would even say, but I'm a Christian. I'm just a Christian who's anti-Christ. Apostasy comes in two forms. There's hard apostasy that is overt and soft apostasy that is covert. Let me show you what hard apostasy looks like. I'll give you some examples. The United Methodist Church recently voted as a denomination to officiate same-sex marriages in their churches, to support transgender LGBTQIA alphabet soup clergy, and they are flying rainbow flags in their churches. As a result, 20% of the churches left. And I would say to those pastors and churches, God bless you. Because you did not leave the denomination. The denomination left God. The denomination left God. And if the denomination leaves God, you have to leave the denomination. Pray for those pastors and churches. But my question is, why is there still 80%? That means that 4 out of 5 Methodists is an apostate. Now, there may be some true believers in those churches, but they're very confused. Here's another example of hard apostasy. The United Church of Christ. And this is where the deception is so diabolical. If you're a new Christian, you're like, I want to find a church. I'm going to go to that one because they're about Christ. It's a church about Christ. They recently voted at their annual meeting to endorse abortion as care, to encourage their churches to be sanctuary centers for abortion, and tithe dollars to be used to fund abortion. And this is the vote, 607 to 24. And 13 couldn't make up their mind. We need to drug test 13 people. That's crazy. That means the whole denomination is an abomination. Some of you feel that I'm judging. I am. In addition, one more hard apostasy example. So on iTunes, there's different categories of music. One is Christian worship music. This week, the number 1 song was by a drag queen artist named Flamey Grant. Okay? Just give you a moment to throw open your mouth and then we'll proceed. If you're an older Christian, or as I would say, seasoned and mature, early days of Christian music, there was an artist named Amy Grant. This is a drag queen artist that previously led worship in a church for 22 years. They did a collaboration with a 10-time Grammy Award nominated Christian artist, and that song went number 1 this week on the Christian charts for worship. Soft apostasy. Soft apostasy happens in churches, and I love pastors in churches, but it happens in churches where they will tell you what they're for, but not what they're against. We're for love and forgiveness and mercy and generosity. Okay, great. What do you think about abortion? Oh, that's political. No, that's life and death. Like, it was in Exodus that the government tried to kill all the boys. It was in Herod's Roman Empire, they tried to kill all the boys. When the government's trying to kill the kids, it's not political, it's biblical. It's biblical. They're like, we're for marriage. Okay, well, what kind of marriage? Like, we don't want to judge. Well, you need to contend. Which means you don't pick the fight, but when the fight comes, you fight. So to be a Christian is not to just be for, but to be against. See, I'm for life, so I'm against abortion. I'm for life, so I'm against murder. I'm for truth, so I'm against lies. I'm for the Holy Spirit, so I'm against unholy spirits. I'm for God, so I'm against Satan. I'm for children, so I'm against genital mutilation of healthy children. I'm for parental rights, so I'm against governments that steal children to castrate them.
Yeah, so that is
Amen, Mark.
yeah.
We're going to be blocked.
We always got to rumble. We always got to rumble as a backup.
Yep.
No, that's true. And it's crazy in this world. Like you said, I mean, you get censored and you're getting blocked, for even just having an opinion on these things. But it's absolutely insanity. The fact that most of culture is looking at it like, yeah, okay, we're going to castrate young boys. We're going to do mastectomies on young girls. I mean, it's absolutely crazy. Yet they can't drink, yet they can't smoke, yet they can't get a tattoo. And yet they can do life altering, decisions that's going to have, implications for their entire life. Like there is no reversal on these things. It's absolutely madness. It shows you how crazy the culture and the society has gone.
Yeah, and I think it's just the beginning where he was kind of covering a couple of those churches that are, starting to kind of bend the knee to some of these things and some of these ideologies. I think it's just the beginning. I think, unfortunately, you're going to see more denominations and stuff that are going to start caving, hanging a rainbow flag and outside of the church and stuff. And this is the time when, like he said, when the fight gets brought to us, that I think is more Christians have got to stand up and really say enough is enough,
That remnant's going to be a very, very small amount. I never really thought about it before, but if you actually think about how small that remnant's going to be compared to just in Christendom, right? If we're just going to take that as a whole, as we're seeing this complete falling away, and of course it's prophesied, we see this, taking place, but it's unbelievable how it's doing it in acceptance and in love. And then, under this umbrella of even healthcare. I mean, churches are now overwhelmingly voting for abortion. I mean, nothing new happens under the sun, like Ecclesiastes says, but child sacrifice has always been a thing throughout history. Now it's disguised as healthcare and it's inside the womb, therefore you can't see it. But yet this has been going on for a very long time. It's crazy. And very few people are speaking up against it because they're worried about being canceled. They're worried about backlash. I mean, we'll probably talk about it tonight, but even, when it comes to certain industries, even the Christian industry, this is going on, but yet who's speaking out against it? Are any big labels, any artists, any, I'm sure we're going to talk more about that, but it's appalling to me how very few people are even speaking out and saying, look, the word of God says this, it's unbelievable.
I mean, how do we, one, Elijah, That's a great video. I was listening to it this afternoon as well.
Right.
But I've been reading Mark's latest book, New Days, Old Demons, or whatever.
Yeah.
And I was blown away by how the comparison to Elijah versus Jezebel and Ahab and all of that is, I was taught a long time ago about spiritual warfare, and I've never really seen it applied like it is. And that's directly what it is. It is spiritual warfare. We're dealing with the demons that were around during the time of Noah. Hence why, we're looking at it right now and going, any day, God, come on, any day, just rapture us, please. It's whatever in that aspect to the world, because they're getting ready for an alien takedown. They're getting ready for aliens to come in and do all this, quote, people are going to go away. But we're looking at all this transgender stuff. We're looking at this started as a movement, I believe, in the early 1960s with little drops of New Age that just started popping up. I mean, I remember going to churches where they had healing crystals and all this other stuff, and it's just the same stuff, but we're rehashing it. And now there's no way to get back. I believe that God is slowly removed his hand from this earth. And churches aren't even preaching about who has dominion over the earth. Who has dominion over what? I mean, it's not God controlling Netflix or Hulu or YouTube. So that I've been blown away by where Driscoll's going, because it doesn't feel like there's too many other people going that direction.
That's
to
true.
Fight.
Yeah.
That's very
There's
true.
no artists. There's no bands.
Well, and that's the thing. Yeah, we could talk about like Christian music, obviously the shows, around that, and we'll get into it. But you're right. It's like, where are the really strong, outspoken Christian bands or artists? Where are they? I mean, I get that not everyone wants to do it, and that's a whole other debate. But the question is, where are they? There has to be some that God's kind of compelling them to say, no, we need to speak out. We can speak out in love, but we need to speak out against this. We need to say something, not cower. Everyone's becoming a complete coward in today's society, right? So I don't know. Like, honestly, it doesn't bode well for what the church or what Christians have gone through all throughout history. They have died for their faith. They've been tortured. They've been like crucified upside down. And yet now we're like worried if we're going to lose our job or that our friends might not like us. I mean, it's a really sad state of where, and that might be the wake up call though, Doug, in the sense that like, it's getting so severe that there's like a jolt to the system and people just wake up and go, whoa, like this is crazy. Like I have to stand for something or, I won't be able to stand at all.
I think the problem is that I would love to be able to have the conversations, but people are so quick to cancel. And on one side or the other, to be honest. And sometimes it's the one side who doesn't want to come or the other side who doesn't want to come to the table. And so automatically somebody's wrong. There's no conversation to be had anymore. It's like we've completely done away with it, and it's just here to point fingers at one another.
Yeah. Well, let me, speaking of Christian music, Doug, I want you to maybe enlighten the listener on this picture I'm about to show. Why don't you share a little bit about this?
Welcome to Audio Feed 2023. This was at the, I guess you would consider this, quote, the main stage.
And Audio Feed is a Christian music festival for the listener.
Yes.
Yep.
Well, I don't know if it is anymore. I don't know if I guess they're neutral in that aspect, because there's a lot of other stuff going on at that festival. And honestly, I mean, I won't say what band it was because I don't want to dog anybody out. But one of the headlining bands showed up and I know the bass player in the band very well. And he came up to me and he goes, "What is this festival? Pro this, pro gay, pro transgender, pro this, pro that?" And I explained to him, "This isn't your old man's Cornerstone. This isn't Christ-centered. This has now become a self-centered festival." And totally blown away. He was totally blown away. He thought they were showing up and it was going to be like Cornerstone. Like I said, that was at the main stage. And they said that, one of the bands that was on the first night, they stated from the stage, there is no judging. There's no anything here. We're here. We love everybody. People still don't get it. You can love.
Yeah.
But there's still got to be consequences. There's still got to be talk about sin. Sin is sin, whether you're gay, whether you're trans, whether you're cheating on your wife or beating your children. It's sin. And you got to call for what it is.
Yeah, it's not very loving, right? I mean, we really fell for that hook, line, and sinker. A lot of the church based on, oh, no, you don't understand. We'd all be defensive. But it's like, oh, that's not very loving. You can't talk like that. You can't be judgmental. Yet the Bible says to judge in all righteousness, right? It actually does command us to judge in the proper context. But it's
Robbie,
like, we're
the
so
Message
scared.
Bible states that we're not to judge.
What's that?
I said the Message Bible says we're not.
There's that one verse that everyone takes, it's only God to judge. But again, there is a lot of verses around that. You keep reading and you find out that we are to judge in all righteousness. We are to judge the brethren. There's a lot of verses. My point is, though, that like everyone say, listen, man, what does it matter? They're just loving each other. They're doing it. What does it matter? It doesn't affect you. But I'm saying, where has that got us? Like what I'm saying is I think it was a really subtle way for the devil to play this game where you're just like, yeah, you're right. Like, why am I coming down so hard? It's like, they're just doing their own thing. They just want to get married. They just want to love each other. Like, let them be. But again, what has it done? It's been this massive slippery slope where we're like talking now and we're like talking about the most insane things that like, I don't think any of us could imagine 20 years ago. We would not have been thinking in our right mind that like literally 20 years later, we'd be talking about open endorsement of mutilation of children, taking their genitals off in the name of like, oh, making them feel better, or, in healthcare. Oh, it's something very loving. And by the way, you're not very loving. That's not very loving of you to not allow them, to be castrated by the state, by the counselors, by the psychologists, by the doctors. I mean, all this stuff. And guess what, guys? When it came to like Nazi Germany, it wasn't just the everyday. It was the scientists. It was the medical industry that were doing a lot of the nasty stuff back then. So what's changed? What's changed? I mean, COVID was a huge wake-up call for a lot of people based on the fact that like, I get it. I can see how quick it can happen. I didn't get before how it happened before. How could people just sit back and watch what happened, with Nazi Germany? But now we all have witnessed exactly how fast it can actually happen. And we're seeing this on all scales. And yet I still believe that God is going to be victorious. I believe that there is a reason for all of this. And there will be that point in time where all of a sudden it's like people snap. And I do think it's getting to that critical point. There's a lot of people that are starting to wake up saying, whoa. No, I mean, for the first time, you're seeing Muslims and Christians standing in solidarity, fighting against evil. Say what you want about the other religions, but the one thing is moral compass and defending the children. They are standing on the side with each other. That I never thought would happen. I would never see Muslims and Christians standing in solidarity, fighting, evil when it came to transitioning children and the horrible things that they're doing. So there's some really crazy stuff happening in our society. But if children doesn't wake people up, dude, we're in for a real bad
future. For our children. They've come for the children, whether it's the whole mutilation or now.
Oh yeah.
NAMBLA.
Yep.
Coming after love is love, bro.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you're 5 or if you're 55 and
Yep.
you love a 5-year-old. At some point there's got to be a breaking point, and I don't know if we're going to see that.
Yeah, there was a comment in the chat, and it says, why are so many Christians so passive? And you can actually sort of replace that because you finished the statement by saying the enemy isn't. It's not just Christians, it's churches, it's pastors. And I want to keep this in context of sin. Broken people do broken things. You know, we hear it all the time. It's the absolute truth. Why that young child is having gender ideology issues is because they're broken. There's a brokenness. There's an issue. There's something that occurred. And why are churches? Why are certain people only ones speaking about it, and churches are silent? Christian artists are silent, is because they're frankly not equipped. The churches aren't equipped. Christian industry, the artists aren't equipped. They're led astray by things like scientism, right? You could see that, you know, it goes back to the debate. Well, they were born this way, or, you know, this is how God made them. Or, you know, we had a person here at Take on the World for a long time, and he believes this was his design. He was designed this way to go back to that lifestyle, which breeds nothing but sin. And
in one breath, you're designed one way, but now the argument is like, no, there was an accident. I was supposed to be designed another way. I was designed wrong. So like, it's getting flipped upside down, where I agree with, they had that cohesion before, but now that central message is all over the place, because now they're arguing. They're like, oh, I was born in the wrong body.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a good point.
But it's that equipping that how are we going to move forward, right? And we'll talk about that towards the end of the show. But, you know, which are really tough questions. How is us, and I want you guys to think about this before, you know, we answer right now. I want you to kind of think of it throughout the show is, you know, how do we be that light to the world? How do we still stand on the word of God without compromise, while still fulfilling the Great Commission of reaching these people that are lost in a dying world? I mean, it's no question about it that the people in these lifestyles, they're committing suicide at a very high rate, 40%. Some statistics show. And then the depression, the anxiety. You see the TikToks and the Instagram reels where these people are talking, and they all will say at the end of the videos, you know, do they suffer with depression, panic attacks, anxiety? And the answer is always yes, because they don't have hope. They don't have who he is. And so that leads us into where we're heading, is people that are walking in this hopeless lifestyle are adapting and trying to cling to faith. And this is what we call this woke Christianity movement, where, you know, and we'll pull up some stuff here that I wanted to show everybody. You know, so if you guys are just now catching the video, you know, I'm sure you guys, if you haven't been living under a rock, you've seen, Flamy Grant, the drag queen, goes #1 on iTunes charts. This is like similar, a year or so, 2 years ago, when as a lesbian, she went #1 on the iTunes charts. And we'll talk about how that's even possible, because the Christian industry isn't pushing this. So how does that work? But then, not yet, but that's true. And that's what we'll get to as well. Yeah. But then, very open Christian artists, when this occurred and happened, we already knew about Derek Webb, and we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about him. In this picture, Jennifer Knapp. We know she left traditional Christianity years ago when she came out as a lesbian. And then there's a picture of Flamy Grant with Christian music icon. Her songs are so powerful in faith. I'm sure Johnny has played plenty of her songs, which is Plum, and how she has come out to join and co-side with this agenda, this woke Christian agenda. So, you know, we go from that brokenness of people, and I think these people see that brokenness, but their answer is to just go to accept, love, everybody's right. It's like very much ecumenicalism when it comes to sin. There is no condemnation. There is no nothing. And so thus this term woke Christianity has really come to light, and it is Satan's tool to destroy the faith.
Look, I mean, as far as music goes, I'll speak on that. What was it? 95, 96? that I started noticing that there is a strong pulling away from what we called the alternative music scene and rock and metal, and while going to all these festivals, and especially Cornerstone, where there was such a liberal Christianity movement happening, that you noticed that slowly God was away from that. And I mean, I'm not 100% sure, but I'd say I'd bet my life on it that that's why Cornerstone ended, is because churches started waking up to the fact that there was several generations of kids that grew up that became pastors out of the 80s movement, then the 90s movement, and the 2000s movement, that were getting watered down messages that we need to love everybody, we need to accept everybody, we need to do this. I mean, it was spouted from the stages at Cornerstone, but no one ever really took time to understand what they were saying. Now we're seeing the remnants of that movement. We're seeing that people like Jennifer Knapp, we're seeing Derek Webb, people that played Cornerstone, people that played Creation, people that played all these other festivals, that are now, we were wrong. We need to accept these people. And I mean, Jennifer Knapp's openly gay. Derek Webb, whatever. Caveman's Call was one of the largest Christian bands at the near end of the 90s and early 2000s. And all of a sudden, God's not good enough. So my thing is that when you said, Chris, that I forget how you said it, but the reality is that they had no foundations. Most of these bands would stand up on stage and say, I'm a Christian, but I'm not in a Christian band. And then say, but it's just like being a plumber. I can't be a Christian plumber and be a plumber. No, Christ is supposed to be reflective of your life, not in you and everything coming out of you. So your music should glorify that as well. No one said you had to be a preacher.
Which is insane to put a comparison between plumbing and actually music. I mean, music's just completely all throughout the Bible used to praise God, and you're going to use plumbing. I know
but
that
didn't have plumbing back in the Bible days.
I know. I get it, but you know what I'm saying? It's just like you can't even draw that comparison. Oh, so I'm gonna sing about all the worldly stuff instead of all the stuff that adheres to my faith and my belief and my conviction. It makes no sense, when you think about it. But they say it all the time.
So the bands might have been quote Christian, but the reality is that they did not have anybody actually leading them.
No. And even the labels, didn't the labels used to have like a statement of faith, but you had to agree to it? And like when the secular labels bought all the Christian labels, I don't think they even care anymore. I don't think they really even, as long as you kind of, sing a couple songs, Johnny can talk about it, but I don't think
they do it though. Why did all the mainstream industry labels buy the Christian labels? Because money. It's all money. It's all
money. And also from their vantage point, they're like, oh my goodness, we can get larger distribution. We can, we can share the gospel with the whole world. I'm not saying their intentions weren't good at the start, but I knew there was going to be trouble when all the secular labels bought all the Christian labels, because even before, when they were smaller and they had smaller distribution, they had conviction, they had statement of faith, and they kind of like what Doug was saying, they kind of in a way tried their best to, but they had some accountability, and they made sure that their artists were kind of, living, decent. Obviously there's some that fall through the cracks, but what I'm saying is I don't think any of that applies anymore. And there's a reason why the majority of Christian music now is praise and worship. It's all church bands. Have you noticed how it's all transformed there? Maybe that's a sign saying that most of these people didn't really have any type of foundation, but yet it went directly where it should have. Christian music will always go where it should. And if you look at it right now, the top 10 artists right now in the top 10, I guarantee they're probably either churches, they're either worship bands, or you see very few bands coming out just independent of, churches anymore. So at least they have some sort of, we can get into that debate about different churches, but at least there's that to go with, you know what I mean? But I agree with Doug with what he's saying, because you don't see that anymore. And there really was no accountability or any type of boundaries or guardrails to help any of these artists.
Well, let's pause there for just a quick second. So there we did get some very lively chat, and I'm going to start up with Elijah. We have been already accused of this is judgment on a fallen world, and that we are doing this in what we're talking about here tonight. Also many times over, express yourself at judgment. Or the best one was carry on simpletons. So those are a lot of comments that we've already received, which is great. Hey, let's chat about this. Let's discuss. So Elijah, that was some. So how do you feel so far? Like, are we coming from a place of judgment or love? How will the world see, just what we've already talked about so far within the first, 40 minutes of the show?
Well, I mean, if anything, at least in my mind, I feel like I'm at least coming from a place of judgment more against fellow Christians or people that call themselves Christians and, leaders in the church, that kind of thing. Christian artists, what the world is doing and how they're choosing to live their life, they have to answer to God for that. But how we respond to some of these things as Christians, amongst ourselves, I think we have every right to sit here and say, we're not saying enough, we're not doing enough. The last time I did a show with you guys was probably almost a year ago. I couldn't have imagined that we would be sitting here talking about a drag queen being at the top of the charts, right? Look at him in just that span, like how quickly things escalate. And why is that? Why as Christians, are we not putting out in the Christian music industry? Are we not putting out enough good content? Like you said, or is it only worship music that's coming out, or is there not enough good bands anymore? Or the bands that were there, where were their hearts at to begin with? But I think that there's a passiveness, and I think that what was at the first question that was asked or comment was, I feel that there's a large level of passiveness in Christianity right now, where we're just kind of turning the blind eye to certain things because everything in culture says that we need to accept everything. If you're not accepting of that, you're labeled as hateful, right? Rather than having a difference of opinion or a difference of belief. So I think as Christians, we do need to, be the light and salt of the earth. And our job is to, sometimes like Mark Driscoll said, we're not taking the fight out there, but if the fight's brought to our door where, our churches are being threatened, our faith is being threatened, our children are being threatened, then now's the time that it's time to start speaking up and pushing back if we have to,
What's going to happen when the government, I know it sounds outrageous, but it's not that outrageous. When the government says, look, in order for humanity laws and stuff like that, you need to have a rainbow flag inside the churches. Do you honestly think at this stage that many churches are actually going to say no to it? They will not risk having their church closed down. And again, COVID's a prime example. Very few churches literally stood up, not just to be rebellious, but saying, listen, Christ is the head of this church. The government does not have jurisdiction on worship, on what happens inside the church at all. And all throughout history, we've seen that. There's a new documentary that just released called The Essential Church. I'm telling everyone, you need to go see it, because it's not just about what happened in COVID. It goes through history and shows you times where this has happened before, where the government was imposing certain things to happen within the church walls, what happened with worship. And they were doing that. Like in my own city, they were saying, listen, you can't sing, you can hum. You have to have so many people at your church. You have to do this, X, Y, Z. So what I'm saying is, what happens when they get to a point when they're saying you have to display a pride flag in your church? very few churches, you might think, oh, churches are going to stand up and say, no way, we're not going to do that. And how in the world would the government be able to do that? If you start to see the trajectory of where it's going, it will get to that point. Because what I'm saying is, when I saw that the transgender go to number one on the charts, again, they're sitting there laughing and they're saying, hey, watch how easy this is. And it's very easy. Social media, I know independent artists that can be number one on iTunes overnight just because they push a new song. And Chris is familiar with them as well too. That's not the part that's alarming. What's alarming though, is you're going to see more and more of them infiltrating that way, because what's the industry as a whole going to do when they have an openly transgender that's underneath Sony or BMG, because all these Christian companies are owned by secular counterparts? It's hateful. You can't say anything. Yeah, but it's going to upset a lot of our base. Doesn't matter. It's hateful. They'll get over it. So what happens when they start pushing more and more? That's outrageous. That's like, to me, when you saw something like that, it's like the Alex Jones. It's like when Alex Jones got canceled, everyone laughed and said, well, he's kind of a nutball. Who cares? But they went from an Alex Jones to the president of the United States. Do you not think that they're going to do a funny example of what Flamey Grant? I mean, come on, guys. It's a pun on words, right? They're just being comical. Watch this. We're going to go to number one in the charts. What happens when sincere people that are believing in God, that are basically wearing drag, talking about advocating for children to be transformed? Because again, this is where it's at. It's one thing if they're like, hey, I just want to do my thing, or I was born this way. But guys, keep in mind that 99.9% of the transgender LGBT community are for children being changed regardless of what the parents want. In some states, like California, the state will control what happens to your child, right? It's getting terrifying in that sense with certain states that are happening. So what I'm saying was, when it comes to the Christian industry, what is going to happen? Like Elijah noticed a change within 1 year. What's going to happen in the next 10 years time? What are we going to see 10 years from today, the anniversary? What are we going to see on the Christian charts? I'm saying that this is a runaway train. It's Pandora's box. It's open. It's not slowing down. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see open, gays, lesbian, LGBT, and then give it another 20, 30 years. If things aren't done, you're going to see pedophilia. You're going to see like an album, Love and Children or whatever like that going overboard. It's going to happen. There's nothing that's standing in the way. And that's why this is so serious. It all started with, they just want to love. They just want to get married. Guys, it was never about that. And now hopefully many Christians are starting to look at it and saying, whoa, the children, that's too far. So hopefully that's waking a lot of people up. And I know it is. I talk to a lot of people, and the children, even people that aren't religious, are like, whoa, that's enough. That's enough. Like, so I don't know what's going to happen, but I think there's a breaking point coming on, and it's like they went too fast, and we'll see what happens. But that gives me encouragement, because most people are saying, no, enough's enough. We're going to stop here. That's funny, the iTunes thing, but it's going to be an interesting story. I mean, I've talked to Johnny about certain things that might happen in Christian radio. What do you do? What's going to happen? We'll see, but it's all going to play out. But I'll tell you one thing. They've always said, I'll leave it at this. They've always said public enemy number one is not the church. They said public enemy number one is the family. The second is infiltration of the church. So keep in mind that they're just starting this slowly, and you're like, hey, they're just starting to settle put flags in and stuff like that. Why? Because they pretty much have the family done, secure.
Well, people called us racist on our, our first or second? I can't remember if our first or second woke show about us talking about the churches bringing in the BLM stuff. But that's where I think, where you talk about the rainbow flag and all of that coming into the church, it started with BLM. It started with that whole movement, because what is the top tier of their tenants?
Oh yeah,
to destroy the nuclear
family. Yeah,
and anything that has to do with God.
But it's all Marxist. It's a good point, Doug. But BLM, LGBT, ESG, all these movements are Marxist. It's Marxist communism. It's what they want. They want to destroy the church. They want to destroy the family. But family is always first. The church is second. That's my point. My point is, guys, we're just starting to see. We've all seen little hints of it. We're just starting to see the infiltration of the church compared to what they've done with Hollywood, the government, the institutions, laws. They have infiltrated basically the secular society. Now they're moving into the church, in my opinion. Over the next 10 years, there's going to be a major assault coming to the churches, and we're just starting to see the tip of the iceberg. Like the gay, I get the gay thing, they're ordaining homosexual ministers and that. I mean, United Church of Canada was the first church, to endorse it in 1985. They were literally one of the first churches. And I mean, keep in mind that America is relatively new. We're talking in 10 years time, right? 15 years ago, it was illegal in America. Isn't it 15, 20 years ago? I mean, I forget what was the date on it, but it was less than 20 years. It was literally illegal in every state 20 years ago, which is nuts, right? Because in Canada, it already had been here, and and you guys are like, this is crazy. What's going on in Canada? And sure enough, we're always 5-10 years ahead of where America's going to be, even the most conservative, because everyone talks about Texas and Florida, but it's appalling. If you look at some of their transitioning rules in Texas, I was like, are you kidding me? There's some really ridiculous things that are in Texas. And you're kind of like, how could that be? In a conservative state like Texas, it's a lot more woke than you think, especially in the city.
Because there's one major city that is
Austin.
conservative. I mean, one major city that is liberal, and that is Austin.
Austin, yeah.
And they're making the rules for the rest of Texas.
But again, to be fair though, like Dallas, Houston, all the major cities in America, I think are basically going woke. Like I think they're more slanted Democrat. Name me a major city in America that's 100% conservative. I can't think of one.
There's none.
Yeah. So yeah, it's an issue.
It's meant to be that way.
Sure, it makes sense. It makes sense. Yeah. But again, I think the whole church thing, it's going to start seeping in. We've seen this before, like I said, with gay marriage and all this. But I'm saying the absolute assault of saying, listen, if you don't, it's hateful. We're going to burn your church to the ground, or we're going to basically, fence it. We're going to triple fence your church if you're a hateful church. Like, I think that stage of the assault of the government on the church is coming. COVID, we kind of saw a little bit of, but that was everything. That was mosques, that was synagogues, that was everything. Religion was just attacked. The freedom of religion and everything was attacked. Freedom of speech, freedom of movement. But what I'm saying is you're going to see it singled out a little bit more in Christian circles, because there's going to be shows like ours that are basically openly speaking out against this in love. But we're saying, hey, the Bible says this. Well, guess what? Maybe we're going to deem that hate literature. We've always talked about them getting to a point where they're going to deem the Bible hate literature. We just didn't see how it would come fully, but I can start to see it happening now more and more based on, some of the things that they're moving towards.
Well, I mean, look at what they're doing with Song of Freedom.
Yeah.
I mean, that movie alone, with everything that they're facing,
Good point.
How do you take somebody's real life story and then call it
Fake
conspiracy?
Dude, it's absolutely insane. They're trying to expose and saying, hey, this is a major issue. You'd think that everyone would get behind the fact of like child trafficking and the horrific things that they go through. And if anyone that's watched the documentary or studies it, it's absolutely revoltingly horrifying. But yeah, all of a sudden, article after article after article after article, it's just like these are for QAnon and conspiracy theorists, and it's unbelievable, dude. But that's where we're at now in culture. It doesn't matter. You pick a side, and you're on it or you're not.
Yeah, when it comes to the Sound of Freedom stuff, one of the persons I think we talked about, like in the very first of this woke Christianity series, we talked about Lauren Daigle. And if you saw Lauren Daigle, she's come out highly in support and does not understand why people are fighting against the Sound of Freedom. So, so we've talked about, a lot of Christians have stayed silent on things in regards of, especially when it comes to Black Lives Matter, when it comes to, LGBT issues. This was one I was shocked and surprised that she came in full support of the film without she didn't have a song on the soundtrack. She didn't have anything. She just went to the theater and was shaken because she believes in protecting children. And, kudos to her for doing that, because most Christian artists were still completely silent on this issue as well. And I think, but then again, it comes back to why the artist, why as believers, why, most people, we can get behind keyboards on Facebook or something. We might be able to, type things really well out. But when it comes to their jobs, are they this bold in their jobs of trying to preach the gospel to the lost? There, are they standing up for these rights to protect children? I mean, there's a lot of people who are, but most people aren't, because we're just not equipped, because the church doesn't equip. Online communities don't really equip. To be honest with you, it does require you being underneath somebody that can disciple you. And that is the truth. I mean, we've all probably have our church stories of things that people are silent on or won't.
Fear's gripped everyone though, Chris. Wouldn't you agree? Like even with that discipleship or equipping, don't you think that like one of the main obstacles is fear? that everyone is kind of in that state of fear. Like they got to a point where we're self-censoring. I mean, to be honest, there's elements of me that I'll self-censor just because I don't want to lose my channel after all those years. Now, I'm not going to like, you know, I'm going to still stay convicted on topics. But again, we get to the point where we self-censor. You know what I mean? Like if, for example, we weren't allowed to talk about this topic at all, it was against the rules, we wouldn't be having this discussion, or it would just be gone. Your whole channel's gone. So therefore, we start to learn to self-censor because the overlords are telling us kind of what to do, right? And again, it's not the first time in history that like God's chosen had overlords over them. Like, guys, we've had a pretty easy life. So if we get to a point of slavery or a point where we're like under a very, very tyrannical system, join up with the rest of the brothers and sisters all throughout history that have lived in horrific points where God has literally been victorious, has delivered them, but he's heard their prayers and he's been able to respond and move in a powerful way. So for me, I'm like, maybe we've just been so pampered, we're starting to see this, but it does seem like the woke tyrannical arm overreach of government is kind of the way that the world is working. And the remnant, or the very few that will be speaking out, I think are going to be very few indeed. I don't even know what the numbers would be, but you know, we used to always talk about what are the numbers going to be, but based on what I'm seeing, dude, I think it's going to be very few people that are really openly speaking out and saying, listen, no hate, but I'm sorry, I can't get behind it. I think it's sin. I think it's wrong. And again, if you want to talk, you know, the same here, yes, LGBT or homosexuality is wrong, but same as adultery. If I go cheat on my wife, that's sin. Sin is sin, right? There's different consequences. There's different effects of sin. But the fact of the matter is sin is what separates us from God. Sin is sin. But we definitely don't need to minimize it and say, well, sin. It's like a white lie and murder. Sin is sin. We all understand that there's certain sins that hold different weight. And I would go so far as to say this new psychopathic sin that they're trying to do and wage on children right now is probably the most despicable sin I can possibly think about. In a way, it's even worse than murder because, again, they live with it the rest of their life, knowing they're never going to be able to actually have intimacy. They're never going to be able to have children, and they're probably going to be suicidal. Like, it's horrific. So the church, Chris asked this before, our response is we've got to be ready for this huge amount of children that have literally been deceived and pulled into the system by the government and their parents, trying to get social points, whatever, did this to their children, and they are not only going to be hurt and lost, they are going to be actually despondent to the point I don't even understand. The suicide rates are going to be off the chain. We already seen that already in the statistics, that it's even higher after they have the operation, after they get these medications. But my point is the church needs to be there to pick these people back up. And hopefully at that point, be able to have a relationship with Christ, be able to acknowledge that. And I mean, the detransitioners, there's many. You don't hear about them because, again, nobody wants to give them airtime, but there is a lot. Start looking up people that are listening to this. Go look at the detransitioners, the people that literally said, this was a mistake. This was not the right thing at all. No one wants to hear from them, but they'll tell you horrific stories on exactly what they endured. And I just think that, we need to be there for these people, because you want to talk about a lost and hurting people. I can't think of anything more horrific than someone. You hear about sexual abuse and emotional abuse. Imagine getting operations done to you where you can never reverse. You're going to live every day of your life, never being able to have intimacy, never be able to have children. And there's no way to reverse it. I mean, it's horrific, but we're going to have to be there for them. God maybe is calling us to say, look, that's who you need to be loving. You need to be loving these people that have been scarred and hurt through this evil system. Get ready, because they're coming, church. They're coming. They're going to be coming through the door in droves, because they're going to be like, I was lied to. I need the truth.
At least Robbie's not passionate.
No one's ever accused me of not being passionate.
Well, guys, we're at the top of the hour. So either Elijah or Johnny, let's finish out this top of the hour on any thoughts. Then we're about to go into a video, and then we're going to jump right back in, and the video is going to stir this all right back up. So Johnny or Elijah, one of you two guys, I'm making only you two, Doug, Robbie. Okay, I'll pause.
I'm muting.
Yes. If you guys want
to get him to stop
before we jump to the top of the hour, go for it.
I'll say one quick thing off of what you were saying, Robbie, which was having this group of people that's going to be looking for help, and looking to God for, where do I go from here because of all these things that are happening in our culture right now. I'll take it a step further and say, will they be going to the church that is flying the rainbow flag? Will they be going to the church that is bending a knee? So that's why it's even more important as we kind of go back to saying, like, where we draw a line in the sand and say, why are we drawing the line in the sand? It's because we're going to need to be there for people, right? We need to be there. We don't need to be there and be in support of these things. We need to be there for when people need to run from those things, and where are they going to run to? So,
yeah, because most likely they had, like I said, they've come from brokenness to more brokenness. And yet the reason that they're in the brokenness that they are now, when they're detransitioning and their lives are a mess, it always goes back to those first things that broke them, which is that strain and that relationship that they don't have with the Creator. And when that gets mended, he can heal all wounds. And that's his promise, and that's what he will do.
I'm a mere simpleton, as a person in the chat had called us. But my wife is a trauma therapist, and she's been to school for a number of years. And there are times when she'll be driving home that we're praying for. And I mean, I don't know details because she's not allowed to tell me, but we'll just pray for kids who are going through specific traumas that they've had to deal with, that they've been dealing with, that are ongoing, that they're dealing with. And a lot of times they feel like they don't have a place to turn. So we need to, as Christians, as the church, be that place to have people who have these traumas and who have these problems, an ear for them to speak to, because there are a lot of times that we talk depression, we talk suicide, that people don't have a place to talk. They don't have a place to turn, and judgment or not, we need to be there to be able to help out those who are in need.
Yep, absolutely. And we'll dive deeper in there towards the end of the show, but
I'm just a mere simpleton.
You're an amazing simpleton. All right, so guys, I really can't stomach too much of this. But I'm gonna play.
Whoa! It's not. It's middle. It's the.
No, we are top of the hour. We're 11:02. We're good.
Do we have a sponsor or anything?
You know what? Oh yeah, that's right. We do have a sponsor.
Yes.
Let me see if we do have our sponsor.
Johnny just loves the reads.
Everybody. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a quick break.
Yes.
And get into our sponsor for tonight. And actually, you know what? We're gonna let Johnny do this because I gotta go grab my water. So this was going to be a perfect opportunity.
Maybe we need, instead of a 15 or a 30 second liner, we need a 45 today, just because it's a celebration.
There are times in your life when you're driving in your vehicle and you're thinking to yourself, man, I haven't heard that Petra song in a long time. Or perhaps you're driving in your old vehicle and you're like, I wish, I have no DVDs, or not a DVD, a CD, but I need a cassette. Where can I go to get that? Well, you could go to bornagainsound.com for your new, your used, your Christian CDs, your vinyls, your cassettes, and you could be the talk of the town. When you're headed to youth group to drop your kids off, and they'd be like, whoa, who's that new old Petra cassette that you're listening to? Guess what? bornagainsound.com will help you out with that. If you're like, whoa, what's this POD thing? Guess what? Born Again Sound. Whether it's new or used CDs, vinyl, cassettes, that's your place to go.
Born Again Sound.
Where can you get the brand new Flamey Grant album? Not at bornagainsound.com.
iTunes.
No woke Christianity at Born Again
There
Sound.
are plenty of
Wait a minute,
old-
Chris. You sell these old artists, these artists that were not foundational. Come on.
Yeah, I know, right? So you
I'm
can
gonna
go
start
through.
protesting.
He'll send them out with like lighter fluid and a match, and then you get to like light it on fire.
Weekly, I go through it to make sure, are they too woke? Then I pull them, I remove them. So it's only, it's very few. There's only like 15 artists that are allowed to be on there at chart now. No, just kidding. So guys, we are at the top of the hour, a little bit past. So we're gonna play a video for you guys. This is a little hard to watch.
If you've just eaten, you might not want to watch it.
Yeah. So this, you know what? So this is.
If you have children watching.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah, you're right.
Get the children away.
So this is This was one of the songs they did at the concert that Plum, Jennifer Knapp did at the Derek Webb conference concert. That's at a church, right? And so, when you look at Derek Webb, the lead singer of Caedmon's Call, right? We've already talked about that, but he's deconstructed his faith, and that's one of the big topics that I'll just briefly talk about. Is there's a lot of artists that use that term, deconstructing their faith, and I think for a lot of us, deconstructing our faith in some areas might be a good thing, right? Kicking out bad doctrine to relook at things. In a wonderful place to do that is right here on Take on the World TV. We got some amazing shows. We've got the Way Remnant. They do some really awesome stuff. Ian Fiducia has a really awesome show. We have more content coming. Gary Arbaugh, we did talk this week, so you guys are watching. He will be coming back with his End Time show. So there's a lot of things. Flat Out Insights is coming back. So there's a lot of things here to help not deconstruct, but reconstruct your faith. I think that's a better way to use that term, is because we always should be looking at what is truth and letting the scriptures guide us and the Holy Spirit guide us into what God has in store for us, rather than what they call is deconstructing their faith. Many artists have done this, and most of them ultimately walk away. Kevin Max, obviously Derek Webb here. He's been pretty much out of the faith for quite some time, although he works at a church, a very woke church. That's why this is allowed to even be there. They really don't have a lot of stances in these regards. One of the guys that I didn't get a chance to talk to you about is, which really does hurt. There's a really amazing worship band called Ren Collective. And the things that the lead singer does say are borderline, not, let's just put it as it is. They are very woke, very pro, not against, and saying some things. Recommends books by guys like Rob Bell, for example. If you guys aren't familiar with Rob Bell, those books were foundational in this woke Christian movement, as many Christian artists. And it didn't just start when he came, writing books. It was long before that. Satan's always been trying to weave himself into, Christianity and lawlessness. You can go way back to Marcion in the very early days of the founding church, and him preaching lawlessness and teaching lawlessness. You can go back to all of those things, and it's just a progression over time within the church, within the so-called movement of Christ. And so here, this is a song that just launched, and somehow this gets labeled as Christian. I can't play it all because there are some really harsh profanity. So if I do miss it, I will be sorry. And I don't want to get stuck in your head, because I do believe this over secular music, this is where real demons play. And that's a really harsh statement to say, but I think it's really true. So this actually song is it's by Derek Webb. It's called Boys Will Be Girls, featuring Flamy Grant. So this will get you kind of in the idea and the mindset of where this agenda is going.
They say greatest revenge is a lie. Well, if so loud as fuck you, and the greatest gift you could ever give, they are one and the same. 'Cause sometimes boys will be girls.
So I think we pretty much had enough, right? I mean,
Well-
as you can get through the whole entire video and you see then boom.
He
Now-
did say one line in there. He said, "Sometimes this will haunt you," and it will definitely haunt me.
Yeah.
I mean, so demonic. And it's just crazy to me that this is where we're at. This is where
Children, dude. Children. Yeah, not even this. We're not even at this stage. We're at children.
I mean, why? I mean, he could have just named it "Men Can Be Women." Why do you have to pick "Boys Will Be Girls"? And then he talks about the armor turning to pearls. You're talking about God making a complete wrong decision when He made you. God doesn't do that. What God creates, Satan manipulates. And that's where we're at. I mean, I work with kids every day, and I have kids, and I couldn't imagine the world that they're growing up in right now, that this is what they're faced with. I mean, the stuff that we were faced with as kids was drugs and alcohol. Now this is what we're faced with. To me, it's just crazy. When I saw this, I about flipped my script because I was ready to just go off, and this is everything that I fought against in the 90s and early in 2000s that I said was coming to the Christian marketplace. And it's no different that we see it with the Methodist Church, we see it with the Lutheran Church, we're seeing it in the Catholic Church, we're starting to see it. So slowly but surely, Satan's getting his foothold in all of these denominations, in all of these people's lives, because, hey guys, boys will be girls. I mean, we got to accept
If you don't like it, you're a hater or a bigot.
Yep.
Fact is fact. If you don't even like that, what you just watched, you're a bigot, you're a hater. You're a transphobe. That's another word they love to use. You're a transphobe. Remember homophobe? Remember back in the day when we were dealing with homophobe? You're a homophobe. Now it's like homosexuality doesn't even exist anymore. It's just so like in our culture, in society, we've been so desensitized watching on every freaking television show. They have to have the gay couple, they have to lesbian couple. We don't even care about that anymore. We've moved on to the whole transgender. We're all like, oh, like this. That's what the scary part is. Another 20 years, are we going to care about transgender? Are we just going to care about pedophilia? Are we going to be having a show like this where we're like, oh my goodness, did we watch that video where they're showing it with like little
No,
boys?
because we're all going to be in jail, Robbie.
Well, that's my point. My point is, are we going to be desensitized? Like right now, it's outrageous. Madonna said this quote. She said, if you see something over and over and over, at first you'll be shocked. But if you keep seeing it over and over and over, eventually you'll be desensitized to it and won't be that big a deal anymore. And you just look back at we were doing those videos from like Hell's Bells and stuff. And a lot of that stuff back then, it was so horrifying and so shocking. Yet right now, compared to what we're dealing with, you're just like, yeah. And what the craziest thing is, I've seen a lot of Christian critiquing shows, okay? From Hell's Bells to They Sold Their Souls for Rock and Roll. But you know what they did? They started showing you secular music and going, oh my goodness, look at the sex and the lewd and that language. We're now at a point where we're actually talking about Christian music on the charts. Like that's the horrifying part here. We just watched a video that was #1 on the Christian charts, right? On the Christian charts, right? That's going to happen more and more and more, which is really amazing to me because we've never, as Christians, been like shocked and appalled and disgusted and want to vomit watching Christian music videos. We might have differences. When Sandy Patty came out and had her affair, or this or
Amy
that.
Grant.
Oh, sorry, was it Amy? Amy
Yeah.
Grant or whatever. Who was Sandy Patty? Something happened to her.
Sandy Petty had an affair.
She did. She was
Right,
one of the
Amy
first.
Grant
She was
got
the
divorced.
first.
Yeah,
She was the first, right? And everyone pulled off the music, and they were all outraged. They're like, "Oh, it's wrong," and you know what I mean. My point is, it's such a slippery slope. And all of a sudden now we're sitting here not talking about Marilyn Manson and like these openly hating, God hating. We're talking about people in the name of Christianity, woke Christianity. Now we're having to analyze their videos to a point where like most people are like, this is revolting. I mean, the name of the song, for goodness sakes, how is that just not alarm bells for anyone to hear? But it doesn't matter now. You have Christian artists, they're sitting there saying, yeah, God, he created you in the wrong body. What kind of madness is that? God made a mistake. Oopsie. And humans, we're going to correct it, which is crazy that be comfortable in your own body in one breath, but no, you need to change it in order to be real. Like they have no substance, no foundation. There's no bedrock at all to any of their ideology because it's so loosey goosey every which way you look at it. It makes no sense. There's no rhyme or reason to anything they say. It's like, oh, we need to identify you. And it's, by the way, you're going to have to change LGBT because the B stands for bi, which is 2. You've already screwed up, right? That's why they're adding all of these other alphabet soup on the end, because they're like, oh no, there's way more than 2. The whole thing's a mess. But again, it makes sense because you said, Doug, what? Like the whole point is God creates, Satan, imitates. Also, he destroys, all these sort of things, but he is going to completely pervert and make it under this love rainbow banner that all things go. And the grand prize, and we've talked about this time and time again, the grand prize is pedophilia. And I'm talking about right in the open, as graphic and as crazy as you could possibly think in your mind. 50 years from now, it won't be that crazy anymore. Maybe it'll be our kids' generation. But the fact is we need to talk about it because the people that were talking about the dangers when homosexuality came in said, guys, this is not going to be good. It is not going to end up good. They don't want to just get married. It's going to keep slipping. And pretty soon they're going to be adding more, alphabets. Guys, we're talking straight on pedophilia. And most societies, most cultures, up until 20 years ago, found it absolutely revolting. I don't care who you are. The worst thing possible to be is one of those offenders and end up in jail. Because you know what would happen to you if you were a child, a sexual child predator in jail? It weren't good for you at all. And it was always known that way. It's like these guys don't have a good life in prison. They get beat every day to a pulp. Like it's not good. The fact is now it's like they're going to be like celebrated. They're going to have parades around this, So to me, it's wild to see the progression. Like Elijah said at the beginning, 1 year's time, and he's seen this much progression in 1 year hiatus.
Yeah, Elijah or Johnny on the video.
I'm curious as to if there was any radio stations who did take that, looking at the charts and being like, "Oh, it's a #1 song. We should add this song." I don't know what the answer to that is, but
Have you had any? Did you even hear about that song before tonight?
No, yes, because you guys had said we were talking about it on the chat before that.
Okay.
But that was the first that I heard about. I mean, I was going through the top Christian songs a little earlier in the show, just kind of reading through it because Robbie had made mention of a lot of them have to do with the churches and stuff, and that's the top songs on radio. So, this is more of an iTunes, Spotify kind of thing that most stations don't go off of. They go off of play like actual spins and stuff. So it is different, but I would just be curious if anybody actually did end up playing it.
I don't think it's now, but what happens when this one's so over the top? Or what happens when a Flamey Grant, let's say, takes the makeup off and does a real worship album, and he parades between both identities, and all of a sudden that song's being played on the radio?
Yeah, Robbie and I talk about it all the time. There's a lot of slippery slopes as to what is okay or what's not going to be okay. What, are there people who are living that life or doing something where it's going to come out? I mean, we talk about Jennifer Knapp or Ray Boltz or, insert the artists in the past that, what's the dude from lead singer of Hawk Nelson? And it's kind of those things you have to make those decisions as to whether or not they are, going to be played on the radio.
I mean, just think of how long ago. I mean, I don't even remember how long ago that Ray Boltz came out, and there was such a backlash. I mean, but here we are, just a few short years later, and we have Flamey Grant. I want to know Amy Grant's take on Flamey Grant. I mean, honestly, has she spoken out about it? I haven't even looked it up because
I don't think she would. With her stance on LGBT, I don't think she would because she'd be afraid to say something, even if it is coming, sort of even defaming her name in a way, because really, ultimately, it is.
Totally.
And I think because of her stance and her, especially this year doing the, officiating the gay wedding, doing all the things that she has done and coming out as an ally, she would never say anything. Now, if it was a straight white guy that came out with a Flamey Grant or, another version of the name, Army Grant, whatever, and he's a butch guy, staunch conservative dude, she'd probably say something, right?
What if Amy Grant came out though, like in favor of transforming kids at a young age? Like basically, do you think there would be an outcry with the Christian radio? Do you think there'd be an outcry with the Christian industry as a whole? I'm just using Amy Grant as example. No, probably not, eh? So it's just a matter of time before they come out directly and upset a lot of people. But the question is, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can I ask why we haven't started petitions to remove Dove Awards from these artists like Caedmon's Call, Derek Webb in general, Jennifer Knapp? I mean, if we are a Christian market, if this is supposed to be about God, then
it's a good point. It's a good point, Doug, because they do it all the time. They remove everyone's awards and they take it back from the secular industry. The minute you revolt or don't go against their program, I mean, they instantly remove your diploma or they take away your award or they take away. It's a good point. I mean, it should start to happen. Be like, no, sorry, you basically were revoking that.
Honestly, Robbie,
it's a good point.
Any of us doing this show tonight can be canceled tomorrow and can be fired.
Sure.
Just for speaking about this.
It's true. It's true.
And why should we be...
You could all come and work at bornagainsound.com.
You can't afford me, Chris. The reality is, if we're going to stand on this mountaintop, if this is the hill that we're going to die upon, then let's die upon it.
But what's the statement of faith? What's the statement of faith anymore, Doug? It's usually going to be the essentials, which whether you're gay, trans, as long as you agree with those essentials, hey, you're golden. As long as you believe that Jesus was the only way. Again,
people forget what Jesus said. Obey my commandments.
Correct.
But the greatest of these is love. But it doesn't say you can get rid of some of these commandments. I mean, I know I eat bacon, Chris. Don't get on me on that.
Well, that will be later in the show. I'm going to talk about that. So it's coming.
But I'm just saying, I think if there's a time, we need to protect our children. We need to protect our communities.
No doubt.
Our society has gone pretty much to hell in a handbasket, and we've allowed it. The church allowed it. This isn't government.
True. No,
this isn't government. This is the church. This is the woke hippies from the 1960s allowing peace, love, and happiness. I mean, Jesus Revolution, great movie, spawned a lot of stuff. I'm pro Calvary Chapel Church, but a lot of those hippies moved on to create this, what we're seeing now. And it's affected every essence of our society.
Yeah. Elijah, why don't you share?
Quick story. So, in my 20s, I moved out to Seattle, lived there for 5 years. One of my first days out there when I started working, I had a coworker that was kind of driving me around the downtown, showing me around restaurants and all that. I remember driving right around this one corner, and there's one of the hairiest guys you will ever see standing on the corner in just full drag. and it was so unsettling. Having grown up in Cleveland, I mean, you're not really exposed to a lot of that, and it was just a very unsettling feeling. Really stuck with me that whole day, and kind of fast forwarding to now, where they're continuing to just pump this stuff in front of our faces as much as they can, going back to the whole thing about just like desensitizing us. They through TV, movies, various forms of media, they've done that through, with, homosexuality and, having a gay character in every show. Right. And if you want to be honest, I mean, I know myself, like, I feel like I definitely have been desensitized to that, maybe how I felt about, homosexuality 10 years ago to now. I'm a victim of that. Right. And they're doing the same thing here. And I definitely think that we've seen some pushback, you see with Bud Light and Target and some of those things. There have been, outside of what media, and mainstream media tells you, you've seen pushback, which is a good thing. And I think that's a good sign. But I think in their minds, they're just going to continue to, blur the lines and continue to push this stuff in front of you as much as they possibly can, to continue to desensitize you, to take that one step, where you're like you're talking about, Robbie, from going from, how can we push the limits? Because the ultimate goal is to get to pedophilia, right? It's to get to the children. That's the ultimate goal. And, who knows what generation or how long that could take, but we know that that's where all this is eventually headed. And, and maybe this, like we said, this is where we're, the hill we're going to die on, and we're going to take our stand here. And this is enough. And this is where we're going to draw the line in the sand. But I don't know. I don't have a lot of confidence. I think that there's been a lot of churches that have bent the knee to BLM, to, to the rainbow flag. And I think you're going to continue to see that, and the remnant of Christians is going to continue to just get more and more narrow, so.
Yeah. Well, I want to read you guys something. This is from 2005. So somebody who's good with math, you can tell me really quickly how long ago that was. I'm just kidding. I know. It was a joke. You guys can laugh. I want to read this to you. And I want you to guess who wrote this. And I think you know what? When we look at politics, we look at, this left-right paradigm. We look at all these different things that there is so much, division. There's so many things trying to grab your attention, to put you on one side or the other. That's why we see, extremes on both sides of the spectrum. I'm going to read this. This is a chorus from 2005. So it's 18 years old. And I want you guys to guess who wrote this. It says, "My first allegiance is not to a flag." My first allegiance. Okay. My first allegiance is not to a flag, a country, or a man. My first allegiance is not to democracy or blood. It's not to my family. It's to a king and a kingdom. Let me repeat that. It's to a king and a kingdom. Our first allegiance is to our king and his kingdom. And I want you to guess who wrote that. 2005. Guess.
Derek Webb.
D-Dub.
He did. That was 2005. Derek Webb wrote that.
What can I ask?
20 years later.
What king?
Wow.
Where's his allegiance, right?
What
Where's
king?
our allegiance, right?
What king? Which king?
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Which king? Now, look, if Rob Blackwell was here, Rob wanted to join us tonight. Derek Webb was really good friends with Rich Mullins and knew Rich Mullins.
Now it doesn't surprise me so much anymore.
Rich Mullins is going
Oh,
to.
sorry, I was thinking of Ray Bolts. Sorry.
Rich
Sorry.
Mullins.
I don't know why. I'm like, yeah. I'm thinking
Rich
of Ray Bolts.
Mullins.
Sorry, I'm
No,
sorry.
Rich Mullins. His first allegiance was to a king and a king.
Of course, yeah.
Look, we can judge people where they're at in their walks, and then we can go back and say, you know, they didn't really believe, or look, this is what sin does. This is what bad doctrine does. It can creep in and change somebody, because that's what Satan's trying to do. He's not, he is trying to destroy us. When we proclaim his name, the name of Yeshua, we proclaim that as king. We have waged war with the enemy, and through disobedience, doorways will be opened, and that will occur and happen in each and every one of our lives. I'm just going to say, if a guy like, you look at Caedmon's call, almost, Rob was telling me, I think nearly every single one of the members is either woke Christian, atheist, agnostic, and they recently played a reunion show. And they were, as we talked about, one of the most instrumental worship bands of the late 90s, which were pumping out tons of different music and part of lots of different projects. This is where we've gotten. And there's very few of that remnant that's actually still standing. That, and one of them, and I'll read a quote really quickly. It's by John Cooper. And John, we've talked about many times, he says, he wrote in an article, I've been outspoken about what I believe to be the dangers of deconstruction and relativism within Christianity, because this is that big key word. When you see people talking about deconstruction of their faith, this is where it leads. This is ultimately everywhere where it leads. Everyone that I know who has left Christianity in the last 5 years began with what he or she has described as deconstructing my faith. It is an epidemic that some will still refuse to acknowledge. A friend of mine texted me a few days ago and asked, why are you so brazen in your words about deconstruction? I believe it's being used deceitfully by those who truly do wish for Christians to not only deconstruct their faith, but also to deconvert. These not so subtle arguments are poison, yet they are tempting to many Christians because they fall in line with current popular culture. This is what we're at war against within the body of the Messiah. And so many that will fall. They'll fall very quickly because they don't really truly have a relationship, I believe.
How has John Cooper not been canceled?
I think, honestly, with John Cooper, I think he's just too big. If he was smaller, I think they'd come for him, but I think he's too big. And also, I don't think he's come on like many radars, like majorly. Like he kind of picks his battles within Christendom, but I don't think people really pay attention to Skillet. Who knows Skillet outside of Christendom? Like really, like if you say it to someone on the street, no one knows.
I mean, in America,
do they? Like I walk up to some kid and I say Skillet, like some secular kid, nobody, not gone to the church, no Christian parents, they know Skillet, really.
I mean, Skillet.
I didn't know they were that big.
The last 4 years, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
Some of the biggest secular music festivals in the country.
Yep.
Yeah.
Headlining alongside Korn or alongside.
Well, again, their story is not over yet. That's all I'll say when it comes to Skillet. And if they decide to be a little bit more vocal and bring more attention, then we might see.
But if John was more powerful, so he's powerful in this, when his music starts to reflect that. When he goes the route of Bryson Gray, Tyson James, and takes it to this whole nother level,
I think Doug
the audience will be even bigger.
I think
they may get canceled, but they'll be even bigger than they've ever been before.
I know, but I think Doug went to sleep.
Yeah, Douglas.
Oh, there you are. You're back. You're back. Sorry, I couldn't concentrate. You're like frozen. You were frozen. It looked like you were really sleeping. It was okay. You were just frozen, Doug. It's all good. No. It's a good point. I honestly don't know, other than he's maybe just not on the full radar. But if all of a sudden he does a song, "Girls Are Not Boys," if he comes out, Skillet does one, and God's created us, guarantee he will have the fury of the entire LGBT, the entire woke Christianity. It will come full force at him for sure. I'm just waiting for an artist to come out to the magnitude of like a Skillet, and him to come out with a song, say, "Girl, God created us," girls can't be boys, boys can't, in that context. But some Christian artist is going to come out and it's going to just drive it home that God created us 100% for real, not by mistake. And if you're a boy, you're a boy. If you're a girl, you're a girl. Something to that line. And you watch what's going to happen. All hell's going to break loose. Like, it's just going to be absolutely insane. We're just going to hear about it. It's going to be everywhere. The headlines are going to be like, this is the most hateful thing. You're going to have like Christian artists of the industry speaking out against Skillet. It will happen. It has yet to happen. So we can talk about that side, but we can also talk about the other side about, are we going to see more, not flamey grants, but like more, like you said, Chris, legitimate, maybe a bit more subtle. You know what I mean? But keep in mind that all of a sudden, then we got a problem, because they're going to come out subtly. They're going to be on the charts. Then all of a sudden they're going to release a children's book. Then what's the Christian industry going to do then? Right. So like, I think like I've said this to Johnny many times. I think it's only a matter of time before the industry as a whole, because they're still kind of like, oh, I don't want to ruffle feathers. It's coming, whether they want it or not. That fight's coming, and pretty soon either they're canceled or they're going to go along with it. But one by one, we're going to see the people that truly stand or fall. But it's coming. It's kind of like you can't stand on the fence anymore. Yeah.
What will be first? Will it be the Christian music industry or the Christian book industry? Is it going to be the Zondervan, or is it going to be some sort of Christian record label?
I think music. It will always come in music before books. I think just because you can be more expressive and more subtle. And it's like, well, they're just talking about love or something like that. I personally think it will be, I cannot see a complete LGBT children's book in Christian stores without literally pitchforks and like Christians, getting really upset. Like to that point, if I saw it at a Christian store, I would literally do everything in my power to have that store shut down. It would infuriate me. And maybe I'm not your typical guy, but again, with music, we're infuriated, but we're not calling for like flamey grant or whatever to be like, canceled or anything. We're just like, it tells us a lot about where the industry as a whole is.
Yeah. So guys, we got 40 minutes left, and I do have
40 minutes.
I do want to end on a very positive note.
We've got 40 minutes. We have 20 minutes left.
That's what I meant. 20 minutes. I'm sorry.
20 like 40 minutes.
I'm sorry.
Keeping us up late tonight, guys. He's keeping us
you guys are staying up late, Johnny. You're staying up late. So I want to go into our final question, because this is going to maybe spend some time. So let's just sort of wrap up, why, let's sort of break into both of these questions at once. I'm going to give you two questions. You can answer them how we want to do it. We can go down that board. I can end. That's fine. It is, what is a proper response as Christians to people that are still living in lifestyles like this, whether they be woke Christians, people of the world? What should be our proper response without compromising the word? How do we live in this balance? Do how Christ did, sat with those people who were the chiefest of the sinners, male prostitutes, and yet he sat amongst them and didn't condone a single thing they did. And then what are your solutions biblically to fight the war for the hearts, the minds, and the souls of our children? So let's attack those two basic things all at once. What is your proper response to Christians without compromising the word, to people that sort of believe this way, like the gentleman or the woman that was in the post earlier, that was blasting us and calling us simpletons and judging and all these things. Where is our balance in that? What are solutions biblically to fight the war for the hearts, the minds, the souls of our children? So, mind you, we have 20 minutes. I do have a video at the end, so if the video goes longer and anybody has to leave, we can go ahead and you can cut out. So somebody go, and then let the next person go.
I mean,
I don't know about this. I don't know about the second one, but the first one, I do believe that you need to be an ear. And I think a lot of times there are people who are looking for someone just to talk to. And you don't necessarily have to agree, but you can still come to the table together. And I've said that from the beginning. Whether you agree or disagree, you can still come to the table and listen. And if they know where you're coming from, then, you know, I think that kind of solves part one. I don't know about part two. That's a good one. I'll have to marinate on it. But Elijah, thoughts?
I as far as the first question, I think that you know, we're called to be the light and salt of the earth, in being that beacon of light for Christ, because there are people out there that are confused, that are broken, that are hurt, and they're looking for truth. They're looking for help, you know, and you know, people are confused. There's a lot of nonsense that's just getting spread all over through the news, through brainwashing, through television and movies, and people are confused. And, you know, obviously our job as Christians is to continue to just point them to the truth and be unwavering in that. As far as our children, you know, raising them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord, right? I have young kids, and I'm trying to do the best that I can to point them to Jesus, you know, as I can from an early age, and also trying to shelter and protect them. There's like a there's a meme I've seen on Facebook. It's kind of like, I think it's like a father and a mother, or father, and he's like holding this like big shield, and there's like fiery darts coming his way, and the kid is underneath the shield like playing, and he's standing there kind of holding back hellfire to protect the child, right? I think every parent, you know, ultimately that's our job, is to understand what's going on in the world, be aware of it, and then and know how we can go about protecting our kids. And, you know, that can be a number of different ways. Obviously, you know, I have little kids, they like to watch cartoons, but I have to be very diligent about what they're watching, because I mean, you know, you can put on Disney Plus or any type of show like that you think might be safe, and they're sneaking things in there constantly. I mean, it's very subtle too, but they want to, once again, get the kids young, desensitize them when they're young, and so that when they're a teenager, you know, college, you know, age, whatever, you know, they've been exposed to so much more than even we have, because we didn't have that when we were kids. You know, I grew up on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and that kind of stuff, you know, like that, all that, the woke stuff wasn't in there, you know, so they're trying to come at them young. So, you know, as parents, that's our job, is just, you know, to be that shield and guard them against the world. So.
And by the way, next video, I will have a picture of Elijah in a Ninja Turtle outfit when he was a kid. He's got him. I know he does.
I have one as an adult. What are we talking about here?
I mean, I guess one of the things that I've learned over the last couple years is, just like Johnny said, be an ear. Allow people to talk. Allow people. I mean, I know that sounds like a far-fetched stretch with me on this show, but one of the things that I have found dealing specifically with teenage youth is that they just want to be heard. They don't want to be judged. They just want to be heard. And if we actually, as not only as parents of kids, you know, I have teenagers. My youngest is going to be 12 in March. So they want to be heard. They want to know that somebody actually cares enough to listen to them. Now, that's up to you. Is it going to be you, or is it going to be somebody else? Unfortunately, I am somebody else to a lot of kids. But while I am listening, I'm also praying 99.9% of the time in my head for these kids. I mean, I have a kid that's right now faced with some pretty serious stuff. And he grabbed my hand and said, "Mr. Doug, can you pray for me?" And I said, "How do you know I'm a praying man?" He goes, "Because I know." And it struck me. And then I asked him even more. I said, "How do you know that I'm a praying man?" He goes, "It's all over your office. It's all over who you are." And I was blown away by that, because if you would have talked to me 5-10 years ago, I was not that man. I was not a listening ear. I was not somebody that you could talk to that would allow you to talk without me going, "Oh, well, you're doing this wrong. You're wrong." I mean, I know I do it on the show. That's the part I play on TV, guys. In all honesty, that's just something that I think anyone that is in any kind of sin, that is in any kind of turmoil in their life, that's all they want, is to be able to be heard. They don't have to be accepted. They just want to be heard. And know that, hey, if you say, "I'm going to pray for you," that you actually mean it. Because, I mean, how many posts do we see on Facebook or Instagram? "Pray for us. Pray for my kid." Yeah, I prayed. Pray hands emoji.
Thoughts and prayers.
Yep. But how many of us actually do it when we say it? And I think that's the only way to combat a lot of this. Yeah, we could be loud. We could be forcing our opinions. We could be forcing scripture. But the reality is that if we do it in prayer and seeking God on our faces, before Him, I just think that's where the battle's got to be fought, because it's not like we can grab pitchforks. It's not like we can do anything other than we just pray for the souls that have been lost. We pray for the kids. We pray for protection. I mean, I pray over my kids, every night, but they still get attacked. They're still getting attacked. Doesn't mean that God's not working. It just means that the devil's working that much harder. So, I mean, I don't know if I answered the question because I have ADD, but I'm scared for the future, but I'm also hopeful for the future. I see my kids. They have some bad traits, but they love God and they love people. And somewhere there, I mean, just like you said with cartoons and stuff like that, Elijah, about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, my oldest, who's going to be 19, showed me this thing on one of the new Transformers cartoons, where they're talking in pronouns.
Oh,
So that's just subtle. It's not like Bumblebee's transforming into a ladybug.
But it's even more subtle than that, like with Transformers or any of these cartoons, because if you actually really start breaking it down, there's just these subtle disrespect of parents. There's these little, just it's unbelievable. If you actually look for it, even without all this woke Christianity, all the stuff that we've talked about in this program, if you actually start looking at all this stuff that we feed our children or even we consume, it's so incredibly subtle, on every level. And I would go so far as to say, when it comes to children programming and stuff that I watched, there was subtle disrespect all weaving throughout it. Like it's very rare. Not to mention, where do you see intact families anymore? Mother and father. No, dad died, mom ran off, dad's a scumbag. Like every freaking story in Hollywood, including cartoons, there's no stability. So it's been broken down a lot before. We're now aware of it now because it's so outrageously disgusting. We're like, oh my goodness, look at this pronouns. And they're talking about, LGBT garbage. The fact of the matter is this stuff has been kind of in there, weaving through, well before. And I think the original question Chris asked was, and again, it all applies because we've been talking about children, talking about people that are struggling with this, and being there to minister to them when, there is that calling or that you feel there's that opportunity. But again, we're all in busy lives, and we're not just going to like run out and just run up to an LGBT parade and start talking to one by one and saying, hey, do you want to be ministered? Do you want to be ministered? I bring a bit of humor, but we're all busy. And again, when that opportunity arises, there's no greater thing that someone that really truly desires, and what I would say is when you do have people that you're helping out in life, whether into counseling or you're ministering to, is if you want to know if someone generally wants help or that God's generally calling to you, give them homework, give them a book to read. And if they finish that book, man, spend as much time as you want. But I'll tell you one thing, the devil will also come to us needlessly spinning our wheels and spending hours and hours on people where it goes nowhere. And you say, oh, well, I planted some seeds. No. The devil wants you just to run around in circles and spend hours and hours with someone where all of a sudden they never really truly desired change or they desired the truth in that way. And I've always said, it was a mentor way back in the day that told me, he said, always give someone homework, give them a book, give them something to do. And if you call them out after a week or they call you, say, hey, did you, read that? Oh, I've been busy. And I think if they really desire that, they're going to read it and then they're ready for that help. So again, ministering, it's always going to be an opportunity. But when it comes to this war that we're in, and we're all talking about kumbaya and let's just loving everyone and everyone that's hurt. No. Like we're at a time right now where more people need to openly speak out and say, listen, no. Like Mr. Nice Guy's over. Yeah. I get the whole love thing and I don't hate you, but I'm going to speak out against it. And hey, newsflash, this whole idea where God hates sin, or sorry, he loves the sinner but hates the sin. Hello, it's not even found in the Bible. They quote it all the time, but it's nowhere found in the Bible. You know what is found in the Bible? God actually hates workers of iniquity. God actually hates these type of things. So we're so like conditioned to be so softened, so feminized. And that's a whole other, show for another time, is the feminist ideology that's completely infiltrated the church well before LGBT. It was kind of a precursor before LGBT moved in, but the feminist ideologies moved in. It's feminized everything. It's softened men where all of a sudden we're now talking like a bunch of women, like, oh, love, and let's embrace, and let's all be like this. God wants warriors as well. God wants his people to stand on truth, obviously in love, but he also wants to say, no. All throughout history, you see brave men standing up and saying, no, we're saying no more. And the more we talk to people, deep down inside, people know that having sexual intercourse with a child is wrong. They know that. But again, they're worried and they're scared that all of a sudden, they don't want to draw attention. People deep down inside know that basically men cannot just become women and women cannot be men. They know that instinctually. So you can talk reason to people and say, listen, we all need to rise up and push back on this. And I forget who it was. Maybe it was Elijah that brought up the Bud Light thing. And he's like 100% right. The fact is that we're starting to see signs that when people are like, enough's enough, they can push back to the point where they can devastate a company. They have literally completely devastated Bud Light. I don't know if you heard the news, but Anheuser-Busch, they're selling off 7 of their brands right now because they're bleeding so bad. They've laid off a ton of staff. Like it was one of the most disastrous things ever. And guess what? There was no recourse. All they had to do was to say, hey man, we made a mistake. We're correcting course. But they're finding that these companies that do that, they get death threats and bomb threats from the LGBT community. Over time, people are not going to tolerate that. The spin of the media, they're not going to be able to contain this. People over time are going to be able to see certain things. And I think that God's actually waking up even non-believers. He's waking up people that aren't even part of his remnant, where he's starting to give them glimpses and saying, hey, look, is this the world you want for your children? And they're saying, no, I don't. So I think we need to be bolder. We need to stand. And we need to basically talk to more people. Of course, we're going to minister to people. We're going to be there as the church always has been for, the hurting. But in no way should we sit there and placate and just play this game where all of a sudden it's like, well, we got to be loving to these people and hurt people. I get that 100%. But these hurt people, I'm not going to be a friend, to that person. Chris asked before, if you know someone that's into woke Christianity, if you know another Christian that's into all these things, what's your response? Well, my response is not kumbaya, let's go hang out. My response is sit there and say it's wrong Sorry, man, it's wrong. I don't hate you, but it's wrong. But you're not going to be best friends with me. Why would I be best friends with someone that's advocating that my child gets sexually transformed into another sex? And that's openly going to fight against me in a court of law. And he's going to basically go against my behind my back in every breath. So no, I think, the time to be, no, let's just all be kumbaya and stuff like that. I think it's over. I think we're at a point now where it's dangerous, where you basically got to choose wisely. God wants you to be wise as serpents, but gentle as doves, meaning that we don't have to be hateful in the sense that we're going to go out and beat up a bunch of these people. Being hateful, there's nothing about being hateful at all. We're not to have hate in our heart, but we can definitely sit there and say it's wrong, it's sin. And Jesus died for that sin, and we're not going to take it lightly, and we're not going to sit there and associate and be okay with people that are openly in that. And that's for anything. Adultery, that's for someone that was into that. If someone we know is doing that, we have to take it seriously because it leads to all these things that we've been talking about on the show. Chris, you're up.
Dude, if you ever gave me a book for homework, I would never read it. I'm telling you.
I had people in the past, dude, that a lot of people, they would never ever, they get to like chapter 1 and they wouldn't be able to read it. But there were a few people that actually finished the book, and I spent my time. But it was a mentor that told me you have to be careful with that. Chris, you're up.
Okay, great. Thanks. That was awesome, Robbie. Thank you. Great answers. So I'm gonna try not to say anything you guys said. I'm gonna really hyper focus more on how do we fight this war biblically, and talk about what John Cooper talked about in the deconstruction. There needs to be a reconstruction of faith, and I'm going to start with the theological aspect here. When you look at atheist, you look at woke Christianity, you look at the creeping of sin into churches. It starts with this simple premise: when homosexuality is considered not a sin, it's always in correlation with other things that are no longer sins. As us as Christians, we continue to push these doctrines and this theology. So, for example, one of the big ones, when God mentions that homosexuality is an abomination, in the same breath, he mentions things like, as we joked about earlier, eating pork and shellfish, eating unclean would be considered an abomination unto the Most High. And we laugh and we giggle at those things, and we say, as we do that, you look at why atheists use this. This is the very reason. It's the premise of 99% of woke Christianity, why the acceptance of these things occurs. Just go do the research, go listen to their arguments, go listen to the things they discuss. And I will tell you, the deconstruction, which is the reconstruction of theology, how we engage in the fight of the war for our children, is to go back to the Bible, because it has an answer for everything. And let me say this: when it talks about clean and uncleanliness, it's as we know, Paul teaches us that the law is a very spiritual thing, and it is teaching us spiritual lessons. So when we say that God long time ago told a group of Israelites, and we because the church believes that they're Gentiles, it's a whole nother discussion and a whole nother aspect. But when we get to this point of that was for them, this is for us, and we start to draw these lines, we come up with this cherry picking ideologies. And this is what has happened, is across the board, everywhere. This is that realm. Mixed fabrics. Of course, you mix cotton with polyester, you're in sin. It's actually wool and linen, and there's very specific reasons why Yahweh said don't do this, because it's actually harmful for the body. And most people don't even understand these things. And so when you look at the very aspect of clean and unclean, as I said, it's spiritual. It's teaching us a lesson of what is clean and what is unclean. What it teaches us to put these things into perspective of what we put into our eyes, what we put into our ears and our lives. It teaches us these lessons. And I'm going to say this: I've taught biblical health for a long time. I truly believe that eating clean is our starting point of understanding this basis. and it could be considered the least of these things, but it is teaching us these lessons that compound to the weightier matters. As he told us, if you will be faithful in little, you will be faithful in much. If we can't even take the word for what it's trying to teach us in regards of cleanliness and forget about the health aspects. I can spend probably 30 years telling everybody why eating clean is way better than eating unclean. You don't want to hear that. We've already done all that. But I'm going to tell you, this is that progression. It's why every homosexual says it's no longer an abomination. And then you'll get to the New Testament, and Jesus is silent on homosexuality. He didn't need to be silent. He didn't have to say anything on this, because the word, his laws, that when he said, if you love me, obey my commandments, he's talking about all these things. We've put these things into categories: civil, ceremonial, moral, and we've forgotten that almost all of these things, unless if it's very for a specific priest, these things are very moral, and they teach us moral lessons and morality. When we just throw these things out willy-nilly, and it is a progression, it is a walk down to get to where we're at. I guarantee you, everybody that has already believed this way this is the progression. It goes back to, do we actually believe what God our Father actually says? Or are we working a loophole to figure out, well, we still want to have this in our lives and we still want to have that in our lives? Or are we just going to say, God, you know more than me. You know way more than me. I'm just going to listen to you. Am I going to say my first allegiance is to a king and a kingdom, what Derek Webb said 18 years ago? Or are we going to say, no, it's to my way of living? Where are we going to stand, right? And that challenge isn't to unbelievers, it's to believers. It's always to reconstruct our faith, to go deep in there and challenge our faith and challenge what we believe, challenge the doctrines. It's the very point of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, is to not only kick out sin from our lives, but to walk in the doctrines in our lives, to reassess these things. Are they good? Are they of God? Are they of the Spirit? Or are they itching our ears? And that's where that challenge comes. It's so many layers. It's so many things. And I really encourage people, if we can be faithful in little and show our children that we're faithful in little things, and then we can be faithful in much, because it's a promise that we can do that, and we can, be that, because as men, we need to establish the nuclear home as the leaders of our home. The women need to be the strong in those homes, in a submissive role to a leading husband who is loving his wife as Christ loved the church, and that the Bible is the center of that, as their playbook, and the glue that holds them together is Christ, the Messiah. And so right there, that is everything you guys said, and getting into that word is what I believe what will save our children, because it comes direct. It's going to come from us. It's not going to be from anybody else. It's going to come here from men leading their homes the right way. So that's my piece. Reconstruct your faith continually. Never deconstruct your faith. We've learned where that walks to, because it leads to this woke Christianity. I don't know if anybody wants to say anything. We're a little over time. I have this video that I want to share with you guys. And that's right, Karen. It's not too hard for us to do. His ways are not a burden. This song, I know Doug has seen it. And this song is entitled In the Words of Satan. And this song is a song where a lot of these people come from, because they are led by Satan, because he's not only coming after unbelievers, but he's coming after all of us. But there is hope, and the song reveals hope. Some of the images that are going to be on the screen, if you are sensitive to things, you may want to turn off now, but if you do stick through it, I think you will be blessed. So this is In the Words
father of lies.
I've been here since the beginning, know exactly how you work. I know all of your cravings, know what makes you go berserk. Been lying from the start just to make you play a part in my infinite rebellion against the Father God. Hate everything he is, and I make you hate him too. Make you hate him with your actions. It's so easy for me to do, cause you like it. Sin feels good for the ego, you love it. Oh, come on, baby, let your head going all the time. I'm winding you up like my perfect little puppet. You're my favorite robot. Welcome to the show, but I'm watching you, and all of hell is with me too, helping me make my life true. Oh, and there is a lie that works for everyone, everyone. A lie that opens up your heart so I can get me some more of your free will. I'm winding you, winding you. Give me the control, that's why I'm telling you, selling you anything, everything, appealing to your human way of being. And I use it all against you just to keep your eyes from seeing past the life you're living, past the moment you're in, past the pleasure of your sin or the cigarette you're smoking, choking on your lust. I'll make you drunk with pride, so deeply spun into my system that you won't see the light. Never mind that I'm drowning you, I keep deceiving you, cause I don't tell you about the God in heaven who loves you, who yearns for you. No, no, I don't tell you about the freedom of forgiveness and truth. Why would I tell you? Why would I tell you the truth? But I'll say that millions of years ago an accident exploded, and you're the result of this cosmic unknown with no real purpose, created for no real intent. The reason for your living is just coincidence. So all that remains is what you can gain. Whatever meaning you attach to your days, you decide. But I help you recognize the important things in life. Introducing money, that's the root of all evil, they say. So I attach your self-worth to the salary you're paid. Be a slave to your property, your jewelry, your cars and things. Advertise that lie up on the TV, so you want that bling. Selling bit by bit the little pieces of your soul, climbing up the ladder of economic control. Oh, the greed of man makes it so easy to pervert the Father's plan. Or I'll tell you there is a heaven, but there's many ways to get in. Keep you so confused that you stay bound to your sin. Tell you there are many ways to the same God. Keep you distracted with your methods so your heart stays hard. I'll make you think you've got spirituality, but it's really just emotional alchemy. All the vanity of self-idolatry, I never let you see that it breeds hedonism. And it's the anthem of this generation. Come on, drink it, snort it, smoke it, swallow it, chew on my illusion of freedom till you vomit it. And still I don't tell you
more songs like that. You're on mute, Chris.
Chris, you're on mute.
Oops, sorry. Powerful song, guys. Yeah, great way to end it. I know we're a little late. So thank you guys, everybody in the chat. It's been lively. It's been fun. What you guys can do is you guys can help spread every single channel or every single show on our channel, including this one if you like. Make sure you share it to all your platforms. Make sure you like it. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. And so, guys, we'll be back tonight. We were super blessed to have Elijah back with us. So, everybody, we've missed you so much. And this has been Sound Off. You guys have a good Wednesday.
It's Tuesday.
Tuesday? No, it's Wednesday. Well, it's Wednesday here.
Yeah.
It's Wednesday here.
Oh yeah, it's Wednesday there. They're after midnight.
It's Wednesday here.
Not for us.
Yeah.
We're still on Tuesday.
Well,
But yeah, well, guys,
well,
we'll see
good night,
you guys
everybody.
soon. We'll see
All
you
right.
soon.
Love you.
All right.
Blessings all.
A little stronger, Johnny.
What?
A little stronger on that, please.
You didn't like that. Love you.
There it is. Got it. See you guys.
See ya.
The breath in my lungs just can't hold me. No man. Start a revolution with no man control. Start a revolution with the breath in my lungs. Sound off. Sound off.